Hey, good morning to those of you on the West Coast out there in Hawaii. Yes, school is starting, and good afternoon to those of you on the West Coast. I hope those of you down in Florida are staying safe, and really the rest of us out here in the Atlantic who are dealing with any kind of storm. I hope you're staying safe out there. I'm excited to get started today. We got a lot of material to cover. If you haven't been here before, I go at a fire hose pace, and today's no different because I want to share information about how to get into the Navy and talk with buyers. But it's funny, whenever I'm doing the preparation for this, there's just so much information, as you'll see. And it's following a process. It's pretty easy for me to bring it up. And when I bring it up, I'm like, oh, I got to show them this. I got to show them this. And so for me, I'm always trying to figure out, okay, how do I collapse this down? And I don't give myself a lot of preparation time either. So we are going to get started right now. As I just turn off this little scroll bar thing, because we already started. Okay, let's get started. In today's training, I'm going to teach you some ways to find people in the Navy that you can call as part of your business development and your capture activities. When you're trying to do sales in the federal market, you need people, right? You need to be able to call people. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. People do business with those they know, like, and trust. And today we're going to talk about how to get started down that process of know, like, and trust. If you don't know who I am, I'm Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to my daily LinkedIn Live, where I teach processes and procedures for you to achieve success in the federal market. I spent 20 years as a small business owner in the federal market. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When you follow a process, you're going to get predictable results. And I know that's what you want. That's what I want when I follow a process. Before we get started, let's follow another process. Help buyers know who you are and remember who you are by putting your company name and your core competency into the chat. Try to use 2 or 3 words that describe your company so it's memorable in there as we continue to move through this community. I don't know if you know this, but we're well over 125 episodes, if you will, in a row here of this training. And it's really exciting because it's all around federal sales training. But the people who come into the community with you are other government contractors or the buyers. Sometimes they're in here as well. And so let them know who you are by putting your information in there. Never feel like you did it too much. Just go ahead and do it every single day. And then as we go through, engage in the community. It's your community. I'm doing the training. I'm going to try to teach you something today, hopefully give you some nuggets that you can turn around and actually do. Hunter, who's in the community, just saw your comment right there, Hunter. She told me the other day, it was pretty funny. She goes, sometimes I don't even wait to get off the training. I'm trying what you say. And I loved it because there's somebody putting into action what I'm teaching. And I want to help everybody. But if all I do is help you get one nugget that makes your job easier and more successful, then that's a great day for me. But while I'm teaching you that, go ahead and engage in the community with others, because you're going to find great teaming partners or friends that you can build in the government contracting space. The other thing is I'm going to ask you occasionally to put things into chat. Definitely do that. It lets me know that you hear me and you understand me, but also I can get your feedback and see what you're saying. It also lets LinkedIn know that folks are out there. Before we get too much farther, I'm going to share my screen. So I got a lot of tabs open on a browser that we're going to get to. But before I get to that, I wanted to ask you to put a couple of things into the chat for me. One is, if you're a HubZone, woman-owned small business, 8A firm, or SDVO, one of those 4 small business programs, or multiple, put those into the chat right now with your company name, because as people come along, they'll be able to see it. This live event, it tends to be watched by, I don't know, somewhere between 50 and 100 people a day, depending on how much we push it out, frankly. And but then it's rewatched, or the replays are watched by over 1,000 people for each one of the trainings we've done. And that's pretty exciting to know. And if you're putting your information in, what your core competency is, and your tags, right? You're not shouting your tags, but if you're just putting them in there, that's really helpful for other people to know a little bit about your company. If they're looking for a cybersecurity type firm that might be a HubZone company, they'll be able to see that. So put that in the chat as we're going along. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so I want to start with the 7-step process for success in federal revenue success, right? And this particular graphic is a great way for me to just depict what is the process for success in the federal market? It begins with visibility. You need to be findable by the buyers and teammates, and you need to look good when they look at you. And when I say look good, that means you need to look like a cyber firm if they're searching for a cybersecurity firm. If you can have certifications around your expertise, that's even better. But this ability for them to find you and then see in a moment that you look like a firm that they should talk to, that's great. So visibility is the first thing. That's also really important because everywhere else in the process, people are going to come back and keep looking at you. And so you want to make sure your visibility just rocks. The next step in the process is targeting. This is what we're going to talk about today. How do I find people in the Navy? How do I get in the program office? I often hear people say, I can't shape the opportunity. But when you really work on the process and you go backwards, you say, do you have a relationship? Do you have any relationships in the Navy or for this opportunity? And then you keep going back. And what I find out is that sometimes people like you just haven't understood how do you find the names and then the numbers and emails for the people you want to target. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So visibility and then targeting. Outreach is picking up the phone and calling people so that you can start developing relationships. When you have relationships, you will hear about opportunities from the government and from teammates, and that will allow you to have opportunities in your pipeline that you can write winning proposals to, and then 1, 2, or 3 out of 4 times you'll win, right? So I'm curious on how often you win, but that's the whole idea, right? The process is pretty straightforward. The effort is a lift, and when you understand the process, it becomes a little easier to do these steps of growing. So let me know you understand what I'm saying here, and just put 7-step process into the chat, that you understand that government contracting really can come down to these 7 steps. If you do each one of these correctly, right, and you just keep learning the skills around them, if you take the time year after year of getting better at this process, that you will achieve success. So if you understand it, go ahead and put 7-step process in the chat. I don't know if you can see the URL, but it's BD in the Box handout number 10. If you want to go download this, you can come in here and here's a button and you can click on it and download this graphic yourself. So while you're doing that, I'm going to move over to a tool I just wanted to show you. And I know it's hard to see. It's on purpose for a second. But we use a tool in my organization to track all the information we get. It's so hard. Where do you put it? In a folder structure, in a PowerPoint file, in a SharePoint site. Where do you put it? And so for us, when we're trying to do business development on an agency, really trying to understand it, we go into this tool. This is a tool called MindMaster, but you can use any tool that's out there. I wish I had an affiliate link to be able to give you, and so I can make some money when you go there and pay $10 a year or a month or something. But this tool allows you to create a mind map of an organization, so an org chart. And so for us, this is one example of an org chart that we use for cyber and DoD. So if you come in, you can see on the side, I've got DoD Cyber Command, and then Army, Air Force, and Marine Corps, Navy Cyber Commands, and then Cyber Mission Force. For example, this is this group. There's a whole bunch of them, and we were trying to understand how many are in there and who they are, and how we begin to build relationships. And then cyber locations, we look at DoD Cyber and say, okay, now let's look at it from a different angle. And why I'm telling you this is you're going to get a lot of information. How do you collect it, right? What do you do with it? And so if I come into 16th Air Force as an example, you can see that by these little icons, I've got notes there, and the arrow is a link that takes me to that cyber command. So anytime me or the people on the team want to come back and get in there, we can, and go back and learn more about this organization. I think inside of this DoD one, these little boxes here, we probably have 200-300 boxes. That's how deeply we understand the DoD Cyber Command. We do this for customers who are, I have paying customers at a high level that pay us to help them understand DoD Cyber completely. And so we do the work for them, and this is how we display it for them and track. Another example of how I might do it is if I go into Homeland Security, I'm working with somebody else in the 8A Stars 3 accelerator that we're doing. And for them, we're doing it a little differently. We're saying, okay, here's the components, but because of the 8A Stars 3, I really want to know people. And there's this push that we're going to do to make sure that the Stars 3 contract vehicle is well known. So in here, we just start identifying the people we want. And an example is if I hover here, you can see that we've listed out each one of these components. Here's all the people. And by putting these people down, the heads of contracting activity, we know who to reach out to. Well, I want you to do something similar to the first mind map I showed you, or the second one, where you're tracking the organization, beginning to understand it, and then you're tracking the people. Let me see if I got DLA here really quick. I don't see it easily, and it could be my eyes. But DLA is another one that we've done completely. We do these little agency activities, and so we have all of our files. We don't put them in a folder. We actually, if I have a file for Customs and Border Protection here, then I would attach the file right here. So I go to one place, and I'm quickly able to see it, and I can pass this off to my colleagues or teammates as we go forward. So it's something to keep in mind, is having a good tool to track all the data that you're doing. Because when we're doing targeting, you're going to gather a lot of information. You're going to gather information about the agency, the mission, all that kind of stuff. And then you're going to gather information about people. How are you tracking that? And I know there's CRM tools, but for all of us, sometimes it's so overwhelming. This is one example of how I have learned to just really be able to manage and quickly go to where I want on the tools. Sometimes we have better org charts and data than anybody in the government, because they've never taken the time to put it together in a way a business developer would love to see. So anyway, so that's that thing. And one last tip before I move to the next slide or tab is, when you do this research and you're doing targeting and you're going to go into outreach, I've described these 4 people. I don't know if you've heard me describe them, but focuses of receptivity, focuses of dissatisfaction, program office, focuses of power, contracting office. So those focuses of receptivity are just nice people. That's what these small business professionals are, basically. Their focuses of receptivity. You need to help them help you. And one of the ways you do that is really understand what's going on. And maybe I can actually show you here. I put out a post today, and this post is about the data transformation services. It's one of the programs within PEO MLB. And so you can come down here and see this. Let me just expand it. But this deck was put out by David Jones, who runs the DATS program. And when I'm going to go in and talk to a focus of receptivity, right, the small business specialist, sometimes we get in there, we're doing capability briefings. But instead, if I can reference like this document or this person and some of the things that they're talking about, then my asks are a lot more specific. And so I can use things like this and come in and say, hey, so the small business specialist of the program office, I was reading what David Jones put out there. Can you make an introduction to David Jones? So now I know who the person is, what program they're in. And there's a pretty good chance that a lot of small business professionals, they don't know all these program offices because they're busy doing their own job and supporting contracting activity, that they don't know the intimate details of program offices. And you would, because you're doing your homework, right? So anyways, this document is a good one for me to start on coming back to how do I find people, right? This is an industry brief that's out there, and they're talking about the data transformation service. Beautiful stuff. And for those of you who are anybody in the professional services, in particular in the IT services, data, cloud, cybersecurity even, it's worthwhile. Obviously, PEO MLB is worthwhile tracking, but data transformation services. And so this is the first tab of many that I'm going to show you really quick on how do I begin to uncover in the Navy who I can talk to. How do I build a list of 50 or 100 people that then when I go into outreach, I've got them all lined up. I know who I want to talk to. Once I line that up, then I'll go track down their phone numbers and emails. But first I just start with who, and I'm like, oh, data transformation services. I didn't know about these people until the first time I saw this deck back earlier this year. But once I did, I'm like, oh, I'm tracking on you guys. I know you exist now. Now there must be people in there. How do I find you? And so as I come through this deck, I'm going to go fairly fast. But one of the things I noticed right away is that they have these 4 pillars within DATS. And these 4 pillars have a person in charge. It's a data management. Gail's in there. And it talks a little bit about stuff. So if I went to meet with Gail, I'd absolutely be reading this, separate training. But here's Gail, right? And if I just close this picture and I just come back up to the post, I told you the 4 pillars, there they are. And here's the 4 people. And there's David Jones, by the way. I couldn't find him on LinkedIn, or I found one person who had 9 connections. And so David Jones, I'm like, okay, I got to get his info and maybe an introduction either through these 3 people or from the next level up, right? PEO Digital. So I'm building a list of Navy folks. How do I get into the Navy? First, I begin to target the people I want to talk to. And so here on that one deck, I got 4 people. there's a couple other people that are, I found just as I was browsing, but the main deck, 4 people. The next thing I wanted to show you is from that, I'm like, okay, PEO Digital, this is, or MLB, this is the place I want to be, right? And actually, let me back up for a second and just say in the chat, if you understand what I'm saying about how you can get great information from industry decks that the government puts out, they are sharing the information. It's our job to go find it. If you understand the value from this, go put industry decks rock into the chat. Let me know you really understand how powerful they are. So industry decks rock. So now I'm coming into PEO Digital. Sometimes you go in and when you're doing targeting and you're trying to find a person, other times trying to find an agency or program office or different departments or divisions or branches within the program office, right? You don't know anything about the agency you're going into until you do all this depth of research. So I go back and forth while I'm doing this. I learned a little bit more about PEO Digital through DATS. And so I come over here to, PEO MLB, sorry. PEO Digital, by the way, is the sister PEO to this one. They used to be one, now they're 2. So anyways, I'm coming down here. I can see a lot of different stuff. I don't want to get distracted for you, but right here, I can see the portfolio. And this is something that'll help me understand more about, well, if DATS is in there and it's aligned to what I want to do, then what are the programs that are in PEO Digital? And so when I come down here, I can begin to learn. And if any of these catch my attention, like here's ready, relevant training. If I'm doing data and I also do training, or if you're in training, right, then I instantly can switch over and begin to search for these people. And I'll show you how I search for them. But the first step is understanding that agency or that component, in this case, PEO MLB, and then understanding the elements in there. PEO MLB is not the program office, even though it says program office, right? It's not your program office. You're trying to sell to DATS, or you're trying to sell to My Navy HR kind of thing. You're trying to sell to the lowest possible program office you can get to. And the first step before you can even find people is to begin to understand what are those programs in there. So, okay, so you can see these. I'm not going to go through, but by reading these, it gives me ideas for what else to go search. So also in the Navy, I got a customer who's in the Stars 3 Accelerator who's looking to get into the Navy further doing Devsecops. I actually know a ton about Devsecops in the Air Force because I share different things in the Air Force or Navy. And so I had to go do a little bit of homework beginning to do it. I want to give you a tip here. I searched for Devsecops, but then I also used this. And if you haven't used this Google's search thing, this is one of those secrets that we professionals all keep to ourselves. It's too important for us to share. Come to me and I'll tell you the answers you want. I hate that with a passion. I want you to know, how do I do my stuff? It looks like magic until you sit there and realize that you can type in the word site with a colon and then period, Navy, period, mil. And what it's saying is only show me DevSecOps related data from sites that have Navy.mil at the end of their domain. I don't need to see commercial sites or Army sites or whatever. I'm focused on the Navy. That is a huge tip. That one tip alone could help you do your homework on an agency. The second thing is I always say, I click on tools for Google. I click on tools and say, filter by the past year. If I need to, I will go older. But if I can find something in the last 12 months, that's better. Anyways, there's a lot of good stuff in here. But one thing I noticed was this article here about DevSecOps and OSA. And I'll show you what OSA is. But I went to the article and I learned about the Navy's software factory and what they call it. I'm like, oh, let me go check it out. And so then it's called Overmatch Software Armory, which is a really interesting name. But this is their basically DevSecOps factory. And I'm going to come into that in a second because I can see what it is, learn more about it, and see which agency or excuse me, which program office, which is perfect because that's where I'm going to find the people now. And I'm going to show you how I find a whole bunch of them. But I did want to come over here for 1 second because one of the results that came up was just this DoD enterprise level briefing on DevSecOps. And so if I come down here, this is 90 pages, right? Would you scroll through 90 pages to get $1 million? There's nothing in the federal government buying world. You should not be looking for a sale that's $50. You should be thinking sales in an agency at $1 million or 10 million, right? As you grow your company. So if you can want $1 million or $10 million, wouldn't you spend an hour going through 90 pages? And right here, 90 pages. And if you scroll just on the third page, is where I begin to find people's names, their offices. I begin to learn about it. So here's something called cloud software modernization. I'm like, oh, maybe I should go look more about what DoD CIO is saying up there, so that when I'm talking down to the services, Army, Navy, Air Force, whatever, I'm also speaking DoD's language. But the part I wanted to show you was here. This guy was briefing. And I'm not going to show you the briefing, but this is one of those 4 pillar leads that I identified earlier, that if I go down in this deck, he's got 20 or 30 slides that is talking about what he's doing. The reason this is important is because when I go to talk to the government, I'm not talking about random stuff. I'm talking about their stuff. I saw your briefing. You were saying these things. And I'd like to discuss it further. What are some, like in here, he talks about challenges they're running into. What are those challenges? Can I give you some examples of what we've done at the Air Force you might like to hear about? Sure, right? And all of this goes back to this targeting and outreach, this way of getting into an agency so you can start building relationships. Okay, so I'm rocking around. By the way, give me a chance to drink water by just saying Google searches are awesome, or just Google rocks. And I'm going to come right back to that. Nine minutes and 52 slides more. Okay, so let me come to this one. So when I went into Overmatch, right? So now I'm looking for DevOps. I'm saying I want to find people who deal with DevSecOps. And so I typed it in. I did last year, and I said, oh, here's another tip I forgot to share with you is this time, I know that I get my most valuable names of people. I mean, the time I get the people's names the best is when I look in PDFs. I'm about to give you my most secret, which I've shared 100 times. And people sometimes miss it. This one thing alone could cut your search time by 80%. Because when you don't search for a PDF, then you get a lot of stuff and you have to look and dig, and it's the wrong rabbit hole, right? We call it going down a rabbit hole. Rabbit holes are not bad, but it'd be better if you go down rabbit holes that might have more names. PDFs tend to be more briefings. And when there's briefings, there tends to be more people's names. And when there's names, there's numbers and emails sometimes. And so when you do a search, you can type in file type PDF. Right here, I could have actually searched for .navy as well, like I did earlier, and used both of those search together. So I'm putting the quotation around it, just for those of you who are not Google familiar, to say Overmatch Armory. I want just that whole word. And then I'm saying file type, only show me PDFs in the last year. What I got were things like this. The first thing I see right away is this briefing that NDIA hosted or whatever. And in there, I begin to see people. So here's NIWC Pacific Executive Director. I actually know who this is because I saw him on a different site. But I begin to see some of these people. Here's Nicole Stone, Director of Prototyping. I don't know what that is yet, but I've got names. And if you go below on this 52 deck slide, you'll find phone numbers or emails. And so let me move to this next one. One of the results came back and told me about this program office or this project, PMW 160. Tactical afloat networks are an interesting thing. If you're trying to get into the Navy, often in software development or IT, there's this requirement that you must do ashore and afloat or whatever, right? So on boats and on land, basically. And so I look at this person. I'm like, well, here's Katie. I don't know how to say her name, so I don't want to say it wrong. But this is the program manager for PMW 160. If I don't call her, I can at least go search for other places where she's at that I might see more of her team. I might see where she's talking. I might even call up and try to have an intro call. Can I introduce our company? You have to do your research before you call. Don't waste that quarter. You know, for those of you young, you used to have to pay a quarter or a dime for a phone call. But don't waste your quarter calling Katie until you've done your research and you know the questions you want to ask that'll lead to her direct reports, for example. But in here, one deck, and I'm finding it. This was the Overmatch. I wanted to show you this, but it's probably just going to show it to my my customers. But one of the things that I saw right away was that Overmatch kind of falls under this NR&DE cloud, Naval Research Development Establishment Cloud. And so this is an AWS cloud. It's perfect because I'm working with another customer who's got AWS focus on software development. And so understanding this allows me to then go, oh, let me dig further into people who are cloud related. And I'm going to go pretty fast because I want to get to the end and show you a LinkedIn search of these people. But I just talked about that cloud. And when I come in, I can see this article that says Navy is doing DevSecOps environment for the AWS secret region. And there's these aisles or levels. But what I'm able to do is to come in here and start searching. And remember how I talked about, it's not just searching for people who are in the agency. Sometimes you want to find teaming partners who can then help you get in the agency. Well, here's Liz, who I think wrote this, and she's the defense director or DoD director for Amazon, for AWS, right? That is a person I'm instantly going to go to LinkedIn and follow and see what she's posting out. What other articles does she have like this? This person, in my mind, is an influencer to the Navy approach that I want to get to. I want her to influence me through the things she's talking about in her articles, et cetera. And she might eventually be somebody who could get me in to either on projects or into the agency to have more conversations. So here's more of NIWC Pacific, but let me actually come over here to NavWar. So NIWC Pacific is under NavWar. I know this, and so I came in doing a search, and I can see there's 787 employees. I almost clicked on it to find those ones related to the DATS and PEO MLB. But then if you come over here, that cloud I was searching, I can see that here's Naval Information Warfare Center Pacific, NIWC Pacific. And in here, 830 names. So I'm wrapping up my 30 minutes here, but I'm trying to get to the end showing you I'm understanding the agency. I'm targeting down. I went all the way down to like one major program that I'm trying to get into. And then I realized where they're at. They're at NIWC Pacific. And so if I come in here and look at these people, as I come down, and I think I'm going to pause here because I'm going to run out of time. But as I come down here, I begin to find these people, right? Here's Bill, that guy I was talking about. I don't have to connect with him right away, right? But I can follow him. What are you saying? You can look at this guy. He's got 60. He and I share 67 connections. 67 people are connected to him and me. Same thing with Lee here, who's I don't even know what he does, but I just saw the number. But as I come down, I can start seeing these people. And your effort to build your list of 50 or 100 people begins with just seeing 800 people and just taking the time, take an hour, take 2 days, take 2 weeks to build that list. If I want to get $1 million, let's say out of NIWC Pacific, is it worth 2 weeks of research time to understand the people that I want to go after? And not the one that's a golden ticket or something, but 100 likelies that I can then begin to knock on doors and find out, just 10 or 20 of them would be golden if they're talking to me, because I can learn more, meet more people, potentially build relationships that lead to opportunities so I can write winning proposals and have great sales success. Okay, so we went through pretty fast. I hope you kept up with me. If it made sense what I was talking about, do me a favor and just put Navy rocks in there, because I want the Navy to know that we're shouting their praise. And Navy puts out some of the best information. It's why I like going in there and helping customers get in the Navy, because it's so easy to find program office people and build a list of 200-300 people once you get experience with this, right? So if you have questions about this or you want my help, send me a DM, a message in there. If you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, by the way, connect with me. We just went through how to get into the Navy and talk with buyers. And one of the things I want you to remember as it relates to talking with buyers is if you do your research and you understand them, they will know that you care because they'll see you have done the research, and you'll be able to have conversations that are not from this subordinate small business or salesperson position, but from this trusted advisor and SME status, because you understand them and you're bringing in your subject matter expertise of software development, cyber, whatever. So if you found value in today's training, do me a favor, put thank you in the chat. We always love seeing that. I actually missed the day of getting back because we had a lot of activity yesterday, but I'm going to go back and respond to yesterday's comments and today. So I thank you for being engaged in there. And I want you to remember that government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you at tomorrow's training.